been working on my layout here, the Granite Peak and Western. And here is the track plan. And at our last meeting, I talked about building the bench work on the Granite Peak yard there that's at the top there. And in this talk, I'll go over like laying out some track. So this is how I laid out the curve on that east side of the yard. I made a little wood pad and set it on my tripod here and centered it from the walls. So all the tracks are like located more or less from the distance from the walls off the track plan. And then I have this cool compass that my dad bought maybe 40, 50 years ago. I still have it, and it works great. So this is nice to use to draw out curves. Once the curves are kind of laid out, I added about a half an inch to bow out that main line curve that's the cork's being glued down with. Give it a little more room. Kind of what we did on the modules too. And then laid out a bunch of sheet cork for the yard everywhere. Glued that down. So the mine and mill that I previously built and took it to the meeting got some awards at the regional award. And I've since taken it off that little box display, and it goes in the corner here. And so here I'm gluing down it kind of rises up a little bit. So I'm gluing down a little bit of some, what was that stuff? Mat board to raise up. It goes up a little bit of a hill to get to the mine and the mill. So there's the kind of stacking it up and going up the hill a little bit. And then the cork laid down over that. And then this is the first switch that's going in, a number 4, Walthers DCC. Everything is Walthers track work on this layout, glued down there. And it's about an 18-inch little section of radius curve that goes into the mine. And so on that Walthers track, you can see there's a web on one side that goes all the way across that track. And so I went ahead and cut sections of that to get a little more flexibility for that curve where all those pins are. As I glued that track down, you can see the mine and mill thing settled in its spot there in the corner. One thing I wanted to mention is like with working with Walthers turnouts, I didn't know this before I decided to go down this path, but you have to modify them in certain situations. So that section where it says modify, you got to do some cutting to get that to go together there. It's not quite a crossover, but it's kind of a crossover situation. And then you also, to make 2-inch spacing with these number 6 turnout, got to add a little 5/8 inch section of track in between. When I worked with the Atlas turnouts, you don't have to do this with Atlas. But the Atlas turnout ones, it's just something I had to deal with. So here's making that modified turnout. So you can see where if you want the track spacing to be 2 inches, you got to overlap them and then decide where you're going to cut these rails at. So here you're getting an idea of how much you overlap those. also, you can see the turnout on the upper right-hand side. I didn't want the switch stand to be over there, so you got to cut that off. So you're going to cut that off, and I'll put it on the other side. Another thing you got to do with Walthers turnouts. But you can see the points look really nice on these. Also, the frogs are powered too, and the rails are powered too. It's really nice that on these turnouts they're that way. So if you're going to modify them, you want to cut the correct little copper connections underneath. And what you can do is pull that rail off that's being pulled off there on each side, and it'll disconnect from the frog. The frog's already isolated, and that rail will slide out, which is kind of cool for modifying these. And so here you kind of work your way in, and you can see the rails are marked where I got to cut them to where they're going to land on the other guy's frog, so to speak. So cut that a little long and then test and then cut again, file down until it's going to fit real nice, like so. You got to kind of modify the ties a little bit. So probably when you ballast it, you won't really notice, but it's joined together pretty well there. So I didn't know you had to do this with Walthers turnouts. So here those two turnouts are on the layout. And I love that laser tool. I think Froland was showing one he was using. Man, that is great to lay out this stuff along these long sections of straight yard trackage. And following Martin's recommendation too, lay out the turnouts first and then connect everything with the track next. So you want to get your turnouts laid out first before you lay the regular track. And so with the laser, what I would do is kind of get it set to where it's, the right distance from the walls and from each other. And then I would just dot with the Sharpie along the laser line and then kind of fill it in with some straight edge there. So those are the center lines. And then here's those little sections of 5/8" spacer tracks between the turnouts. So get those all cut and fit 5/8 of an inch. And so here they are. Here's that number 6 ladder on the west side of my yard, all down and set in there.
What do you use to glue it down? What adhesive?
Oh, I'm using an adhesive caulk. It's kind of a clear to anything, and it stays pretty flexible too. And I don't put a whole lot of glue down, but it's pretty neat. Maybe I'll uh, next time. Really, any adhesive caulk is going to work pretty well. Her side of the yard is all laid out right now, but I don't have that picture here. Maybe next month I'll show us going in.
Hey Eric, what was the CAD program you used to design all that?
Oh yeah, I think I've mentioned this Turbo CAD, and you can find it probably on eBay, like an old version of it, which still works. Um, but I've used Extract CAD before. Um, in fact, that's how I got the dimensions for these turnouts was from Extract CAD, and it's free. It's a free version of CAD you can use. I got used to working with AutoCAD and TurboCAD. I couldn't figure out how to use extract CAD because I'm just so used to doing things a certain way. So yeah, surprisingly, the dimension spot on. That's where I was getting like the 5/8 of an inch, which I double checked laying it out. I was like, wait, you can't just plop those down. You got to put that little bit of spacer in there to do a number 6 ladder. All right. Well, okay, so I put everybody to sleep here.
Hmm.